It's easy to look up at the next mountain and go, I want to get there, I want to get there. But if you focus too much on that, you can start going, I didn't achieve enough, I didn't achieve enough. But if you turn around and look down, you're in a pretty high mountain. You've accomplished a lot this year. Whether you realize it or not, you've had an amazing year. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, 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 welcome. I hope you know what time it is. It's time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. First and foremost, no matter where you are in the world, I just want to say I am thankful for you listening. I'm thankful for you being a part of my life, even though it's virtual. Some of us we have met at various events, others we haven't, but I'm just so thankful that I have the opportunity to be able to record information, to be able to share information with people, to be able to help people. And most importantly, I'm super thankful for people like you that actually listen and get value out of it and post comments and feedback. So if there's anything I can do to help you, if there's any episodes or anything that you'd like, just post it in a comment and we'll definitely get back to you and address those and put those in future podcasts. But yes, this is the time of year, right, as we finish up November and head into December. This actually launches on December 1st, right, is when this episode goes live. So I'm sitting there going, I don't know about you, I can't believe it's already December, right? That 11 months have gone by, right? It's crazy, right, to think sort of how fast the year goes by. But what I always find important is to spend a little time just in gratitude and appreciation. Just spend a little time looking back. Because I don't know about you, but most cybersecurity professionals, most CISOs, most people that are achieving amazing things in their life and are pushing the envelope and are operating at that upper tier of world class, which is all of you, we're always focused on the next mountain. We're always focused on the next summit. We're always focused on the next challenge. And that's great to be that way. That's what builds world-class, successful people. However, if we're not careful, it can also get people very down, very depressed, very angry, because it's always something else, right? You're never satisfied, right? There's always another challenge. There's always another million. There's always another car. There's always another mountain. There's always another challenge. There's always another position, right? Whatever it is. And it's great that we're always driving ourselves and pushing ourselves to that next level. But it's important to stop once in a while, turn around and look at how far you've come, because you're on a pretty tall mountain already, right? If you're listening to this podcast, whether you want to be a CISO, you are a CISO, you've achieved a lot. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening. You wouldn't be listening to this type of podcast. So it's easy to look up at the next mountain and go, I want to get there, I want to get there. But if you focus too much on that, you can start going, I didn't achieve enough, I didn't achieve enough. But if you turn around and look down, you're in a pretty high mountain. You've accomplished a lot this year. Whether you realize it or not, you've had an amazing year. And this is one of the big things with almost all of my coaching clients this past week, is really getting them just to appreciate and have gratitude for what they've already achieved. Now, if you're like most of us, and I do the same thing, And my clients do the same thing. In the past, if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, Eric, what did you accomplish this year? And I say this to all of my coaching clients, my one-on-one super high achievers. What have you accomplished this year? And what's the typical answer? I haven't achieved anything. I haven't achieved much. I'm behind on this. I'm behind on that. And our natural response is to immediately focus on what we don't have. And then I push them. I'm like, really? So you've done nothing this year. You've accomplished nothing at all. And they're like, no, I've done nothing. And I'm like, okay. Let's go back to January. What was your fitness like in January? And they're like, okay, I guess if you want to include that, I've lost 15 pounds, I hit the gym every day, and I ran 14 marathons. But that doesn't count. It's like, wait a second, in what world doesn't that count? Right? So once again, if you start really going in, and wait, you've read more books this year than any other year. You've spent more time with your kids than any other year. You've gone in and achieved all this success in business. You got a promotion, or you've studied this new field, or you've started applying for a CISO. The reality is you've done a lot, but as world-class folks, we tend not to focus on it. We tend to only focus on what we don't have and not on what we really do have. So I recommend this exercise all the time, but especially as we finish the year, and at least in the United States, we celebrate Thanksgiving, right? Where no matter where in the world you are, you should always be in a state of thankfulness, not only for other people, that we do well. Most high achievers do a great job of thanking and appreciating those around them. But where we do a terrible job is thanking and appreciating ourselves for what we've done and what we've accomplished. So I just urge you, as we finish up the year, just to really be thankful for what you have. And instead of looking at the next mountain, look back. Look back at what you achieved. As you can see, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold here. And the reality is, the more I talk, the more I cough. But guess what? Life must go on, right? I'm not going to miss, I haven't missed an episode of Life of a CISO in, I think it's a year and a half. No, it's probably 2 or 3 years, because we do it weekly, and I think we're on episode like 187. So what is that, 3.5 years? I've never missed an episode, and guess what? I'm not going to miss an episode now. So maybe a little bit of cough here and there, but we're going to get through it, and I'm appreciative for my wonderful voice, appreciative for what I've been given, and we're going to rock and roll. So I always like starting a little bit of perspective, a little bit of motivation, a little bit of resetting. And like I said, this was something that came up with all of my coaching clients. So here's the exercise. I go in and I say, okay, what are you thankful for? And most people initially are like, nothing. I don't have anything to be thankful for. I don't accomplish anything. So here's the goal. You take down a piece of paper and have to write down 50 things you are thankful for. Eric, I can't. No, you have to. You have to. Puppies are going to get kidnapped if you don't write down 50 items. So do you want to be responsible for innocent puppies being kidnapped? No, you don't. I know you're probably looking at me like I'm nuts now. That's always the joke that I have with my team. If you haven't figured it out, I got a little weird sense of humor. So I always joke with my team, like I ask them to do something, and sometimes I push them. I push them out of their comfort zone, and they're like, I can't do that. And I'm like, but you realize if you don't do it, innocent puppies are going to be kidnapped. And they're looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, you don't want to be responsible for that. But guess what? It's crazy and nuts that it works. It actually gets them to motivate. So you need to write down 50 things or innocent puppies get kidnapped. And you don't want that on your shoulder, right? Trust me, you don't want to finish the year knowing that you were responsible for that. And I'll give you a hint. Start simple. What are you thankful for? The air that I breathe. For being alive. Do you realize that some people didn't make it through this year? So the fact that you're alive. And do you realize some people don't have a car? And some people don't have a house? And some people don't even have enough money for gas? And they have to walk to the store? So I'm just giving you perspective. And once again, depending on who you are, do you realize there's some people that don't have two arms? There's some people that don't have sight. So hopefully I'm giving you some ideas. Start broad and basic if you can't come up, because the idea is once you start, you'll get drilled down and you'll really see how much you've accomplished and how much you have to be thankful for. But just start with broad general things. But it's such a powerful exercise, because here's the coolest thing. When you're in a state of gratitude and appreciation, you can't be angry or mad. The two don't go together. So it actually forces you into an empowering state, which then allows you to be more creative and more focused. So now that we've got that taken care of, I've gone back through a lot of my episodes, the last 15, 20, 30, and I've noticed I've been focusing on the biggest issue, the biggest problem, which are the outer layers. Chief officer, chief officer, chief officer, right? Many people have the CISO title, but they're not really a CISO. I sort of go through the test. Are you a real CISO? So here's a couple of the questions and criteria. Do you sit with all the other chief officers? So in most companies and most buildings, there's an executive wing where the CEO, the COO, the CFO, and any other COs, depending on the size of the company, sit. Do you sit with them or do you sit with IT? That's a first really good check. Because if all the executives sit in one area or one building or one floor, and you're sitting with the IT and technical and security folks, right, that's sort of telling you you're viewed more as a security person than you are an executive. So that's sort of one thing to keep an eye on. Are you invited to all the executive meetings? So when the CEO, COO, CFO, and other COs get together, are you invited? Are you included in those meetings? And then the third is, do you have regular conversations with the other COs, the other chief officers? Because I'll tell you right now, proximity is power. And when you sit together, CEOs and COOs have informal conversations on a regular basis. They're popping into each other's offices, they're asking questions, they're texting, they're communicating back and forth. How often and what is the frequency in which you communicate with the other chief officers? Now, here's the cool part. The first and second one, you don't have as much control. Where you sit, right, that's something that takes a lot of time for them to move you if you're not sitting with the other chief officers. But number three, you have a lot of control over. Why can't you actually spend more time with the other chief officers? What I used to do when I recognized, when I had the title of a CISO, but I wasn't sitting with the other executives, they were in a building 15 miles away, and I wasn't regularly having conversations with them, one of the things I did is I asked the executive assistant for the CEO, there's conference rooms, right? There's always executive conference rooms. There's 2 or 3 of them. I basically asked them, said, listen, can you let me know whenever those conference rooms are available? Like in the morning. Like if you come in the morning and you're like, oh, from 10 to 12, nobody's in there. Can you just email me in the morning, and can I just come over and work from that conference room for 2 or 3 hours? And here's what happened. The other executives would walk by, and I'd leave the door open, and they'd see me sitting there, and they'd be like, well, that's interesting. And they maybe pop in and go, are you here for a meeting? I'm like, no, I'm just here, so if you need anything, because I know being close, proximity is power. I said sometimes it's easier to talk, so I'm just, whenever the conference room is available, I'm just going to try to work here for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 days a week, just so if you have questions or issues or comments about security, I'll be available so we can talk. They're like, oh, okay. And what do you think happened? They'd start popping, oh, hey, Eric, since you're here, I want to run this by you. Oh, Eric, since you're here, why don't you come in to this meeting and join us? Things that would have never, ever happened if I wasn't local and there, but because I was, it started shifting and changing everything. So as we start finishing the year, it's good to sort of do a self-evaluation of, okay, where can I improve? Where can I get better on the chief officer piece? And I focused a lot. Go back and listen to all the previous episodes. I've done a ton on the chief officer. But what I want to remind you in this episode is, don't lose sight of the middle 2 letters. Don't lose sight of information security. Remember, what is cybersecurity? Because I see sometimes these folks, you get so focused on being a chief officer and being involved in the meetings and all those things that you actually forget to focus on cybersecurity. You forget to realize that, yes, you're a chief officer, but your strategic weapon is cyber. Your strategic weapon is cybersecurity and using that as a business enabler. So the question is, how well have you done in improving the revenue and profitability of the company utilizing cybersecurity? How well have you shifted it from an overhead function to a business enabler? Now, I'm not saying you're going to be a full-blown profit center like the revenue generating components of the company. But if you look at it from a stopping breaches, stopping compromises, and minimizing impact to the business, that could be a business enabler that actually stops revenue from leaking out and ultimately adds to the bottom line. Because the reality is this: if your company was going to have a ransomware attack and be down for a week, lose $20 million in operating costs, and then pay a $5 million ransom, if you were able to stop that at the last minute, if your team was able to realize, whoa, we saw this email, finance is about to transfer money, stop, and able to stop or prevent attacks or issues or other factors, isn't that really a business enabler? Isn't that ultimately saving money, saving costs, and saving revenue to the business? It absolutely is. But we need to be thinking about cybersecurity differently. So just a couple of checklist items. First and foremost, what is cybersecurity? I am still blown away that when I'm either asked by the company to help their CISO or the CISO hires me directly, I am still blown away today at the percent of people when I say, can you define cybersecurity for me? And they go like, well, Eric, you know what it is. I'm like, I know, but I'm asking you, can you give me a 1-sentence definition of cybersecurity? And they sort of look at me like, but come on, Eric, you know. I'm like, so can you tell me or not? And they sort of fumble and muffle and bumble. And the reality is they don't. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? You're the chief information security officer and you can't clearly define the term. And I ask you to do that. What is cybersecurity? So first and foremost, cybersecurity is about understanding, managing, and mitigating the risk of critical assets being disclosed, altered, or denied access. If we want to do a little higher, cybersecurity is all about understanding, managing, and mitigating risk of your critical assets being negatively impacted. So if we don't want to break down that last area into the CIA triad of confidentiality, integrity, availability. We can keep it even broader. But really, what is the foundation of cybersecurity? Risk to your critical assets. That is the foundational piece. So critical questions here. What is the risk posture for your organization? What risks are acceptable and what risks are not? Because here's the reality. You're going to have risks. 100% security doesn't exist. So let's actually take a couple steps back. Let's actually start there. Do your executives know that? Do your executives know that you're going to have a breach? Do they know that a compromise is inevitable? And do they know that 100% security cannot be achieved if you have functionality? Are they aware of that? And what's the typical answer? Oh, of course they do. Okay, let me try this again. Have you actually told them? Or are you just assuming? Because I'll tell you right now, I've worked or have known CISOs that go, oh, of course my executives know that. Of course my executives know that 100% security doesn't exist. And then what happens? They have a breach and they get fired, which means the executives assumed 100% security did exist, right? Because if it didn't, they wouldn't have fired you. If they knew that breaches were inevitable, they wouldn't have fired you. So that's the first thing. Make sure your executives know 100% security doesn't exist. Second, what is your risk posture? Do vice presidents, managers, and directors know what is and is not acceptable risk? Do they know that, okay, this risk we can accept, this risk we can't? Because the reality is business decisions are security decisions. When you make a decision, what's the biggest flaw that companies make? They only ask one question. What is the value and benefit to the business? Well, guess what? Any crazy, wild thing you do is going to have value and benefit to the business. But the real question is, or the second question, what is the risk or exposure? So now, if you're training all your execs to ask two questions, what is the value or benefit? What is the risk or exposure? And then they have to determine, is the value and benefit worth the risk? Don't they need to know what the risk posture is? Don't they need to know what is and is not acceptable level of risk? And then finally, what is your critical data? Do you have a prioritized list of critical data for your business or organization? So just as we finish up the year and we head into next year, I want you to start evaluating. How much are you a chief officer? How focused on cybersecurity, and what are areas that you need to focus on or highlight or spread more light on as you head in to the next year? So remember, when we talk about cybersecurity, we're really talking about three big things. One, recognizing that risk will occur and 100% security doesn't exist. Two, having a risk posture that everyone is aware of. And finally, three, having a list of critical data and critical assets that are prioritized that you can use to protect and secure your organization. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Life of a CISO and look forward to seeing you next week.